Hello everyone, tonight we are brushing dust from a half-woven braid left dangling beside the threshold of a sealed stone room where no doors remain, and the air tastes of rosemary, salt, and something far older than either. You are here. And something's breathing behind you, not because it needs to, but because it remembers how. You probably won't survive. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. The braid is unfinished. That's the first thing you notice even before the dust, even before the lichen-veined walls, and the strange way this chamber echoes when you don't speak. It's thick, dark human hair, definitely, and it's tied into itself in a pattern that doesn't quite follow the way braids are supposed to go. Over, under, fold, twist, but halfway through the rhythm breaks, and the last threads hang like a loose question. No one lives here, not now, not for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. And yet the braid is warm to the touch. You were warned not to say her name, not out of fear. No, this is the kind of story that pretends it doesn't need fear. They told you not to say it because that's when the braid begins to tighten. Not rapidly, just enough. Like a thread pulled through dry bone. Just enough to be noticed. Just enough to pull itself finished. The village nearby, the one where you parked your rental bike and pretended not to read the faded plaque about ancient silence rituals, calls this ruin the listening house. The older women leave offerings here, dried herbs, salt in circles, or silver wire shaped like combs. The children are told the braid belongs to a ghost who was almost forgiven. And you, in your casual jacket and your microphone wired to your collar, are trying not to look directly at the wall where her shadow once remained for 3 generations longer than her body. You're just here to record a video. Maybe add some commentary about Iron Age burial customs, how hair was often preserved in bogs for centuries longer than skin or bone. You even brought the laminated diagram that shows how hair oils bind to the peat. A scientific curiosity, sure, but there's no peat here, just stone. And still the braid is warm. Some researchers still argue whether this site was ever a true sanctuary. A few claim it was just a misinterpreted cellar. One insisted it was a bread oven. That last one was gently laughed off stage at a symposium in Oslo, but to be fair, at least he made it home. The others, well, most of them stopped responding to emails once they heard it, which no one's defined. You haven't heard anything yet, except the wind, except your own breath, except that single strand of hair still swaying from the braid though the air has stilled. You try to change the subject out loud for your viewers. Something about ancient grooming customs, maybe? About how prehistoric combs were made of bone, not wood, because wood decays too fast. About how in early Anatolian settlements, women were often buried with their combs, sometimes still tangled with hair. You deliver the line like a fun fact. Maybe someone in the comments will say cool or abu. Behind you, the unfinished braid pulls just slightly tighter. Just slightly. Your flashlight flickers once, then returns to normal. Batteries are new. You checked them 3 times. You're always cautious like that. You tell yourself it's the condensation you're underground after all. Moisture does strange things. Still, you step further in. Carefully. The floor is uneven, worn from centuries of what might have been barefoot pacing. Not footsteps, just a kind of back-and-forth indentation that doesn't quite match normal human stride. As if someone walked while weaving, or prayed while unmaking something. You mention this aloud too. Half theory, half improv. Some believe these grooves indicate ritual pacing, you say. But no one's really sure what kind of ritual involved weaving nothing. Some say it was a mourning practice, like a widow finishing her sister's hair. Some say the braid was meant for someone who never returned. The braid behind you stirs again, and you are not alone in the room. But also you are. That's the kind of logic the listening house specializes in. You wipe your lens. You pretend you don't see the dust spiral from the wall like someone exhaled too close. You crouch by the corner where a cracked pot lies on its side, still stained faintly red from ochre or wine, or something in between. The local legend says she braided her own hair while waiting for the words to forgive her, but the words were forgotten, or banned, or never real. You make a quiet joke to the camera, something about how you've also forgotten all your passwords, and maybe you too will become a legend. The joke lands softly. Something in the back of your throat itches like a name. A syllable you didn't mean to think. The braid pulls tighter again. You feel it, even though you haven't touched it since the start. You look up. The camera's still rolling. That's good. That means if you disappear, someone might find the footage. Or not. Sometimes the footage just comes back without you. One scholar once tried to translate the inscription carved above the braid so faint you can only see it when the light hits just wrong. She claimed it was a prayer, or maybe a warning, or a love poem. She died before confirming which. Your flashlight flickers again, and this time when the light returns, there's an extra line woven into the braid. A new strand. A strand that matches your hair color. You swallow. You do not say her name. Not yet. But the braid tightens anyway. There's an old belief, probably medieval, though no one's pinned it down exactly, that hair continues to grow after death. This, of course, isn't true. Not technically. It only looks that way because the skin dries and recedes, giving the illusion of post-mortem growth. But illusions are all that death needs to feel alive again, aren't they? You're thinking about this now, not because you want to, but because the braid has grown since the last time you looked at it. You only turned your back for a minute, maybe two, long enough to record a voice note and aim your camera toward the wall etchings, barely their grooves, like someone tried to write music but got stuck on the first bar. The lines don't loop or repeat, they descend, like a staircase designed for the blind. And now the braid is longer, thicker, still unfinished but less so. You wonder quietly whether it's feeding off the silence. You try not to look at the strand that matches your own hair again. Maybe it's a trick of the light. Maybe the camera's night mode will correct it later. Maybe everything's fine. You say this into your mic. Everything's fine. Your voice echoes back a few milliseconds too late. Not much, but enough to sound copied. You move slowly toward the arch where another chamber opens to your left. There's no door, just stone and a smear of what might be mineral stain or the oily mark left by 100 quiet hands over 1,000 years. The smell deepens here. Wet stone, scorched herbs, old breath. The ground hums beneath your feet. Not vibrating, just remembering. You enter. Inside fragments. Beads carved from shell. A comb split down the center, its teeth worn to nubs. 2 flat stones laid like a bed, and something scratched above them, circles nested inside circles. You whisper mostly for your viewers. Some interpret these as symbols of protection. Others say they were meant to confuse the dead. It's not clear which camp you fall into, but right now confusion seems like a valid strategy. You crouch near the stones, brushing away grit, revealing another faint symbol, one you've seen before. You pause. It was carved into the floor of a different ruin, hundreds of miles from here. Same concentric circles, same single notch slashed through the outermost ring like something trying to escape a promise. You filmed that ruin too. You didn't notice the notch until editing. You'd joked then that it looked like a compass with no direction. Now, you're not laughing. Scholars still argue whether these marks predate writing or are just decorative motifs. One recent theory suggests they were meant to reflect the moon's cycles. Another, far less popular, claims the circles were made to distract something beneath them, as if whatever watched from below could be lulled to sleep by spirals. A third, less cited theory, found only in footnotes and the margins of unpublished papers, claims they aren't symbols at all. They're instructions. You shift your weight. Something clicks beneath your boot. A loose tile, no. Just an old pine cone. Desiccated, cracked open. You weren't expecting a pine cone. This ruin is carved deep into limestone. No trees grow nearby. No forest for miles. And this cone, split open but still fragrant, feels recent. You don't pick it up. Instead, you sit beside the stones. You let the silence settle. You let your breath slow. You glance at the camera still recording, and you listen. There's a rhythm in the silence. Not like drums, not even like breath. More like someone thinking, a memory you've interrupted. And then gently, without spectacle, the braid tightens again. Even though you're in the other room, you try not to speak her name. Not because you remember it, but because it's close now. Like a forgotten lyric, just one hum away. You whisper something else instead. Hair was once used as thread. Burial wraps, bindings, tokens. You trail off. You know this part already. In some early settlements, the dead were bound with the hair of the living. Not for superstition, but for continuity, threading the spirit, they called it. It was said to keep the soul from wandering too far. As if the body could be gently reeled back. Folklorists still argue whether this was an act of love or control. You lean your head back against the cool wall, just for a moment, and you hear it. 3 soft breaths. Not yours, not the camera's. One behind you, one in front, one directly above. You open your eyes. The ceiling has no holes, no rafters, just smooth stone. But the air above you moves anyway, disturbed like water around a hidden fin. You rise. You walk back into the main chamber. The braid has moved. It's not growing longer. Not this time. It's grown heavier, thicker, and now it lies across the stone floor like a sleeping thing. Still unfinished, but almost. You reach out not to touch, just to see if it reacts. It does not. You say aloud, trying not to shake. They say if you finish the braid, she forgives you. A pause. Then under your breath, just barely recorded. They don't say what happens if she finishes it first. You sit again, this time on the floor. The camera still rolling. The audio soft. No soundtrack needed. Just quiet breath and distant wind and the faintest scrape of something dragging itself from the walls of memory. You make one last joke before the section ends. Honestly, if this is a hair commercial, I'd give it 5 stars. The braid does not laugh. You are not alone in the listening house. But also you are. This contradiction sits on your shoulder now, a weightless hand that makes no sound, casts no shadow, but somehow insists on its presence. The braid rests where you left it, almost touching your boots now, as if it too has sat down to wait. You haven't spoken her name, but it's no longer a question of whether you remember it. It's remembering you. There's a place in the ruins the villagers never mention, only gesture toward with half circles, drawn in the air as if they're nodding something unseen. You found it marked once on an old military survey map, long since out of print. A note in tiny pencil handwriting. Subchamber sealed, irregular airflow, no known exit. You find it now behind a leaning slab of slate coated with mold and ivy roots that somehow persist despite the lack of sunlight. The opening is narrow. You duck. The stone bruises your spine with its patience. Inside, the air is thick with a smell you cannot name. A little like burnt honey. A little like sweat trapped under mourning clothes. And beneath that, something older, something like salted dust. The room is small, almost a cell. One wall has collapsed, revealing what might have once been a stairway, but now it spirals down into nothing but stone dust and pooled condensation. The temperature drops sharply, not like weather, like a choice. In the far corner, another braid, this one much shorter, but unmistakably hers. And behind it, a single mark scraped into the stone, a line perfectly vertical ending in a tight spiral, like a thread pulled through skin. Some researchers argue this symbol is related to the so-called knot scripts found in the Andes quipus. They're called where information was encoded through loops and twists of cord. No one agrees if this has anything to do with that. The quipus were functional recorded crops and taxes. This feels personal. You don't approach the second braid, you speak softly. This isn't in the guidebook. Something shifts behind the wall. A sigh made of stone of memory loosening its grip for a moment and breathing dust. There's a story told in a single sentence repeated across fragments from ancient burial poems. Her fingers outlived her voice. No one's entirely sure what it means. Some say it's poetic, Others believe it refers to women who braided as a form of speech warnings, blessings, accusations, all told through the number of strands, the pressure of the pull, the direction of the twist. You whisper this into the mic, and just behind your left ear, you hear a fingerless hand mimic the motion of a braid. You don't look. Instead, you step back into the larger chamber, the one with the first braid, the one growing longer, heavier, more sure of itself. Now you speak her name. Not aloud, but inward. You do it the way babble dream of names without knowing them. The way you feel certain something is watching you from the wardrobe even when the door is closed. The braid stirs. You say louder, I think she's listening. The camera flickers again. The sound distorts briefly like a sigh recorded backwards. And then a laugh. Just a little one. From nowhere. From everywhere. Dry, rhythmic, almost polite. You freeze. This isn't a ghost story anymore. This is a listening. You kneel beside the braid again. You don't touch it. Instead, you take out the small charm the old woman gave you at the village gate. 3 threads tied around a sliver of comb. For quiet hands, she said, "You'll know what that means when you're there." You lay it beside the braid. For a moment, everything goes still. And then the braid begins to unspool. Not unravel, not fall apart. It unspools. Like it was never made to hold anything. Like it was just waiting to be spoken back into thread. One strand at a time pulls free, curling softly into the dust like a spider's memory. And there, coiled at the end, is something wrapped in a knot. Small, bone white. A tooth, human, child-sized. Still rooted with the dark pulp of memory. You step back. Some say teeth are the only part of us the earth does not forget. Not because they last, but because they are never truly quiet. You want to leave. You don't. You sit. And the air thickens again. This time not with dread, with expectation. You remember something else the old woman said. Almost as a joke, but not really. If she finishes the braid, she leaves. If you finish it, she stays. You smile despite yourself. And if neither finishes it, the woman had looked down, then adjusting the knot of her shawl. Then she waits and tightens. The silence wraps around you now, gentle as breath, heavy as hair after rain. You say nothing, and the braid does not move. But something behind your eyes begins to dream of weaving. The braid is no longer a braid. It's a question now, unspooled across the stone like a sentence half-written in hair, still warm, still unfinished, and she is closer. You can feel it in the air pressure, in the stillness of dust, in the way your breath refuses to fog the lens anymore. You have not touched the tooth, but you've thought about it. You've almost reached for it 3 times the way one might reach for a coin at the bottom of a well, half hoping to retrieve it, half wondering what else you might bring up by accident. The thing wrapped in that knot is not waiting to be discovered. It is waiting to be remembered. You return to the inscription above the braid, the one only visible at an angle under flashlight flicker. It has changed. The spiral at the end of the line has split open, like a bloom, or a wound, or a mouth. Some argue ancient writing was never meant to be read in sequence, that the earliest marks were visual maps of thought, emotion, memory, each meant to be stood inside, not interpreted from outside. If that's true, this room is a sentence. And you are the punctuation. You pace quietly, slowly. You count the strands of hair unbraided on the floor. 23. Each the length of your arm. Each different, kinked, coiled, straight, silver, black, faded ginger. One with a trace of resin clinging near the root. Each belongs to someone who either spoke her name or braided too soon. Your microphone catches a faint scraping sound. Not claws, not stone, thread. Being pulled through something not quite there. You whisper for your viewers, "You're still with me, right?" Don't answer out loud. Your voice cracks. You weren't expecting it to. You blink twice to reset your fear. You joke gently. If the ghost is a hairstylist, I hope she takes walk-ins. The air doesn't laugh, but it doesn't tighten either. Progress. You explore the far edge of the chamber now. The wall, with the faintest outline of a door that never opened. It's carved with tiny holes, 2 fingers wide, deep enough to lose a flashlight beam. Spaced irregularly. You place your palm near one. The air pulls at it soft and cool, like breath being drawn. In some Neolithic tombs, these were called spirit flutes. Wind passed through them to make sound or let sound in. Not musical exactly. More like messages translated through pressure. If you spoke near one, the person buried behind it might hear your voice years later in fragments. You lean close. You say nothing, and from the wall softly, "Why did you stop braiding?" Your heart stops. Your camera glitches. The voice is not yours. It is not hers. It is the voice of someone else who came here. Someone who asked a question and didn't wait for an answer. You move back. The hair has shifted again. It is curling slowly toward the charm you laid down. Testing it, wrapping around it with interest, not malice. She's listening. You kneel beside the charm. The braid twitches. One strand winds itself into a loop, just one, then stops. You recognize the loop. It's from the Quipu theory. A marker for beginning, not of a story, of a burden. Some say ancient weavers used hair to carry messages because paper couldn't last and ink bled in rain. But hair that survives carries oils, sense, even grief. You reach into your satchel and pull out the spare coil of thread you brought for tying up cables, not ancient ghost rituals. But it's here. White nylon. Very modern. You hold it beside the braid. It leans away. Gently. Not in rejection, just preference. You understand. So you remove a single strand of your own hair. This part hurts more than it should. You thread it between two loose coils. Not to finish the braid, just to join it. And the air sighs. Not cold, not cruel, just a breath that hasn't been exhaled in centuries. You make a quiet joke, barely audible. Guess I'm on the guest list now. Then the lights flicker. Not your flashlight, the stone. It glows faintly from the wall's trails of phosphorescent fungus pulsing. You hadn't noticed it before. Or maybe it hadn't bloomed until now. You follow the light. It leads you toward the collapsed stairwell. You hesitate. Because down there the spiral continues. Because down there the braid has already finished itself once before. You whisper, "I should stay," and the air says nothing, which is somehow permission. You place the camera down. Leave it running. You descend. The spiral staircase is broken in 3 places but walkable. Stone dust coats your shoes, your hands, your throat. The walls hum, not sound, not heat, just memory. At the base, another chamber, round, smooth. Empty but for one object in the center. A mirror. Small, not reflective, just waiting. You do not touch it, because in its surface, instead of yourself, you see a girl, braiding. Over, under, fold, twist. Then pause. Then again. Her face flickers. Not because of the mirror, because she is being remembered. And beside her a comb. Your comb. The one from your satchel. Which you left in the other room. The braid, unfinished again, lies across her lap. She doesn't look at you, but she speaks. Or rather, her reflection does. "Will you finish it for me this time?" You do not answer. You breathe, and the braid tightens softly. The mirror does not reflect you. It remembers you. This is clear now. It has been remembering you since before your arrival, perhaps even before you were born. Perhaps it remembers everyone who ever came close to finishing the braid only to stop at the final loop. Perhaps that's what makes it a mirror at all. Not light, but memory shining backward. The girl in the glass continues her braid. Her fingers don't tremble, though they move like she's tracing a tune she no longer hears. One strand crosses, then another. Over, under, pause. Her hands are calloused, her nails clean, her movements impossibly familiar. You realize you know her rhythm, not because you've seen it before, but because something in you has always braided this way, even when tying your shoes, looping cords, folding napkins. It's the way you learn things you never studied. Inherited gestures. Rituals passed down without consent. She still won't look at you. The stone chamber hums faintly around you, less like sound, more like tension held between centuries. There's no wind, no breath. But the braid on her lap tightens as if reacting to your presence. The final loop waits. And you realize something else. She is not waiting for you to finish it. She is waiting for you to stop her. Because finishing it, truly, finishing it would mean something final. A seal, a silence, a departure. And maybe she doesn't want that. Maybe she's afraid. You speak to the room. What happens if I help her stop? The mirror shudders. Dust falls from the ceiling like sighs. In a nearby culture, the Sami of northern Scandinavia, braids were used not only for beauty, but as bindings, woven into fabric or talismans to hold prayers, curses, or secrets. Unfinished braids were warnings, messages not yet told. If you saw one tied to a doorframe, you were not to enter, and you walked straight into one. Some scholars still argue whether these stories have any truth. Others suggest that ancient braids were a method of recording oral history, not in knots, but in tension. Each twist held a syllable of something that couldn't be said aloud. You look back toward the spiral staircase. It's gone. Not hidden, gone. The wall has closed itself or never existed at all. You're in the chamber now. Entirely. No return, no above. Only the unfinished braid across the girl's lap in the mirror, remembering both of you from someplace between. You kneel. The braid stretches towards you one strand at a time, not reaching to be completed, reaching to braid you in. One coils near your wrist, another brushes your cheek, a third finds your ankle. They are not binding, they are asking. Over, under. Will you stay? You whisper, I don't know. The mirror flickers. The girl finally looks up. Her eyes are yours. Not metaphorically, not symbolically. Yours. She speaks without moving her mouth. Then you must leave something behind. You don't ask what. You already know? You untie the charm, the one the old woman gave you. Quiet hands. You place it at the base of the mirror. A soft sound follows. Not hair, not breath, just acceptance. The braid uncoils. The girl vanishes. And the mirror becomes a mirror again. Still dusty, still flawed, but now your reflection peers back. Eyes wide, hands still, hair slightly undone. You stand. The wall behind you opens. No wind, no sound, just light. But the light does not come from outside. It comes from within the stone. A slow bioluminescence born from old fungi or ancient fireflies long dead and still glowing. You step toward it. You do not take the braid. You do not finish it. You leave it exactly as it was. Because you understand now she never wanted it finished. She only wanted someone else to stop. To witness the tension. To survive the pattern. The chamber exhales. The stairwell is whole again. You climb. The listening house welcomes you in reverse. The walls remember your name but do not speak it. Outside, the sky has not changed. The sun still balances on the edge of the horizon like a coin not yet spent. You do not look back. You press stop on your camera. You say to no one, we don't always have to finish the story. But deep inside the stone, the braid remains. Unfinished, waiting, watching, and every so often, tightening, long after you've left. Long after the memory fades from your fingertips and the dust is washed from your hair, the braid lies untouched across the stone. It grows imperceptibly, not longer but closer, not toward the door, toward the echo of you. Some things were never meant to be bound. Some names should never learn themselves aloud. And some stories, the most patient ones, prefer to be remembered without ever being told. The chamber breathes. The braid does not move. But if you say her name, she will.